Pro-life talk. Real world answers. This is Life Report.
Welcome to Life Report. I'm your host, Josh Brom, and I'm here with my good friend, Stephen Ertelt, founder and editor of LifeNews.com. We've had you on before back when we were just audio, but finally we get you in the TV studio for the first time. It's so good to have you back.
The real studio. It's a great studio. You guys have a good setup.
We've had an awesome partnership with LifeNews.com. This has been great. I'm just so glad
you've done a great job. It's good to get the word out to more people, so happy to help.
There's been this whole, this has been going on for a couple of years, but it's really exploded this year. A lot of pro-lifers talking about it. I'm getting emails about it, and it's one of those things that I haven't been able to really research enough, and so I'm glad to have the expert here. The Girl Scouts Planned Parenthood
That's right.
link. So I guess my first question is there actually a link between Girl Scouts and Planned Parenthood, or is this pro-life conspiracy theory or urban legend?
Urban legend. No, it's not on Snopes. Yes, there actually is a link. And going back to the 1970s, actually, there's a lot of research. There's basically a lot of news stories, a lot of things where you can see Girl Scout local troops bringing in Planned Parenthood to do workshops, to do events, to have their agenda be basically pushed on these young girls. You have a lot of duplicity where you have somebody who's a Girl Scout CEO of a local troop, a leader, and some sort of bigwig type position, whether it's a local troop or on the national level, over the years, where they are also involved in Planned Parenthood in some sort of leadership position. So you definitely have a lot of tie-ins with some of the same people running in the same circles in both Girl Scouts and Planned Parenthood. And you've seen that over the years, 70s, 80s, and 90s. It really, though, has seemed to pick up, I guess, the last 10 years, where you had a former Girl Scouts national CEO admit in a television interview that we do have a relationship with the Girl Scouts. This was Kathy Cloninger in an interview, I believe, on the Today Show about 10 years ago, saying that was the case. She followed that up a few years later, actually, in 2007, I believe, where she also again said there is a relationship. The two organizations work together on different things and what have you.
But seems to be a pretty, isn't that an open and shut case at that point?
That would seem to be. And there are more things that have happened. They have co-sponsored events. One of the big things that's been a concern for pro-lifers is just on the local level doing workshops on sexual issues, where, of course, you've got representatives of the biggest abortion business in the country coming in and talking about sex, and of course ultimately probably talking later on in their lives about abortion to young impressionable girls. It started in Waco, Texas. A local pro-life group in Waco in 2004 cried out about what was going on, launched kind of a boycott, informed their community. It got a little bit of national press, not a lot, about what was going on with a joint workshop there. And then just over the years, more information continued to trickle out about this relationship to the point where the last couple of years, there have been some national partnerships that have happened. At the UN, the Girl Scouts and Planned Parenthood teamed up for an event. And then on the international level, the WAGs, the Worldwide Girl Scouts Organization, that's their acronym, has teamed up with Planned Parenthood in extensive ways, and in quite a number of ways. So all of these things, whether it's local, national here in the United States, or international, lots of evidence, lots of different events going on, lots of similar ties, these kinds of things. And it's gotten to the point where pro-life groups are ready to say, and they were ready about a month ago to say, it's time to really raise a big stink about this. There's been a lot of research, a lot of links, a lot of evidence that have gone on, and now it's time to say we need to take this to the next level, kind of with the Susan G. Komen debate that we had a couple years back, where we need to have more awareness of what's happening. So LifeNews and a bunch of other pro-life organizations have started a boycott of Girl Scout cookies. Not to target the girls, and that's one of the false things that's been brought up is, oh, you're targeting the girls, you're going after them. No, not at all. They're the victims in this. Just like we talk about women being a secondary victim in abortion, other than the unborn child, the girls are victims here because they've got Planned Parenthood coming in with and pushing their agenda on them. And so a lot of pro-life groups have pushed this boycott to say, you know what, this is a way to raise awareness, it's a way to get some publicity, get some news reports, and just to make people aware of what's going on, these links and these ties that they have.
And the hope there would be that if you can have Planned Parenthood not being the ones talking about these things, or maybe nobody is, at least Planned Parenthood is not starting the relationship that young with these particular girls.
That's exactly right. And then lots of other links, lots of things that have come up recently that have been a concern. The Girl Scouts on Twitter were pushing end of the year lists of who ought to be Women of the Year. In December, everybody comes out with all sorts of lists of who's the top whatever of the year, and they look back on what happened. Well, in 2013, there were a couple of lists that looked back on who should be Women of the Year for last year. There were two different lists, one that had Wendy Davis, who of course is the infamous gubernatorial candidate in Texas, who stood up and filibustered in support of late-term abortions all the way to birth. She was on a list that the Girl Scouts was pushing. And then Kathleen Sebelius, our illustrious HHS secretary. Excellent HHS secretary, who's been pushing Obamacare, which has had abortion concerns and rationing concerns and whatnot for pro-lifers. There was another list that she was on. And so these two women who are pro-abortion activists were essentially held up as examples of women who maybe Girl Scouts would want to idolize or be like when they grow up or follow in their footsteps. Not great examples for young women. So that's been a problem. And then a few months ago, the National Girl Scouts organization in the U.S., GSUSA, Girl Scouts USA, hired a young woman who is the former spokeswoman for the Ms. Foundation. Gloria Steinem, one of the early abortion advocates who gave us Roe versus Wade and the feminist movement that led to what we have now with 57 million abortions. She was a former spokeswoman for that organization, which continues to press for abortion. So again, these ties, these links, this duplicitous arrangement where you've got people coming in from abortion advocacy groups who are still working with them and also working with Girl Scouts, just all of these things adding up to be a real problem that I think pro-lifers need to be made aware of.
Where are the Girl Scout leadership coming from? Why are they connecting with? Is it just that the top people, like corporate Girl Scouts of America, they're pro-choice, or they're wanting these certain messages to get to the girls? What would they say if I was asking them why is there a relationship?
Well, they say there's no relationship.
Well, see, wait a minute. I thought we said that they did have done multiple interviews saying that there's a relationship.
Well, they're repudiating their former CEO, and the latest CEO, the newest one, a former CEO said that, and now the current CEO, in fact, just released a video last week saying there are no relationships, we don't have any relationship with Planned Parenthood, we never have, we never will.
Never have.
Yeah, even though clearly there are relationships that have been established on all sorts of levels.
Okay.
They're repudiating that. In fact, they've even gone after LifeNews for reporting all this, trying to come after us, and we can talk about that.
We'll get to that in a couple minutes.
Okay. Yeah. But they're definitely trying to do some spin, do some damage control, and because they've seen the bad publicity that they've gotten, especially in the last couple of months where a lot of pro-lifers are speaking out, I think for the first time, and so they're really trying to push back and say they have no relationship. Why do they? My personal opinion is I think they just run in the same circles. You see a lot of organizations. The YMCA has had issues. The United Way has had issues. Susan G. Komen has had issues. A lot of these folks run in the same charitable organization circles. And so they go from one organization to another, and they're all friends. They all work together. So it's just natural to them. I don't think it's specifically a concerted effort of, we really want to foist this agenda on young women. I think it's just natural for them that this is what they would do. If we want to talk to young girls about sexuality and sexual issues, well, naturally we would go to Planned Parenthood. Who else would we go to?
For that.
Yeah, because we wouldn't go to pro-life groups. That's not who we associate with, because we're more on the liberal side. Sure. And so, you see the NAACP, you see YMCA, YWCA, United Way, you see all of these organizations over the years have these kinds of relationships with Planned Parenthood, and it's just natural for them. I think they don't know any better, for lack of a better term.
Okay, so assessing their new statement that there has never been a relationship with Planned Parenthood, I assume there's not a plausible option here where the former president was just incorrect and saying that there was a relationship when there wasn't. That doesn't seem very plausible. So is it possible that they figured out this is maybe not good PR to have a relationship with Planned Parenthood and they've cut that off, and maybe has it changed now? Or do you think
I don't think that's the case. I think it's damage control. I think they're getting bad press.
Why?
Really because it's clear and it's obvious. Nancy Pelosi, even in an event honoring the Girl Scouts, was asked about that by a reporter and admitted they have a relationship with Planned Parenthood. And I think then she realized what she had said, and she kind of retreated retweeted and said, "Oh, the Girl Scouts work with all sorts of organizations," and so it's very clear. It's absolutely clear the ties that they have, and we've exposed it. And now they have come after LifeNews, and so this is a big thing. We've done all sorts of reports over the years, not as many as we have recently because it's kind of come to a head. But in our reports, we've done what any news agency would do. We've included the Girl Scouts logo in our reports. And they're upset about that. But we've done exactly what any news agency would do. Say you watch your local news and there's a company coming to town. Say Best Buy comes to town. They're opening a store. Well, you would see the talking head on the news and you'd see a little logo.
Would be right next to
behind them, exactly. And there's a picture of Best Buy. It's
their
logo. Maybe it's a clip of the store. Their local reporter got out and did some footage, and you see their sign, and it's got their little R or their C or whatever the company has to copyright or register their mark. Perfectly fine to use that. It's First Amendment, no problem. Well, that's what we have done. Well, I think to try and intimidate us and trying to get us to back down on reporting on Planned Parenthood, the Girl Scouts sent us a very nasty cease and desist letter, the kind that big organizations always send to smaller groups or people to try and get them to stop doing whatever they want them not to do. And in our case, that's reporting on their link to Planned Parenthood. Our attorneys from Alliance Defending Freedom, got to give them a plug, good pro-life group.
Yep, love them.
If you're a pro-lifer and you need legal help, contact Alliance Defending Freedom. I actually slipped and almost said Alliance Defense Fund. That's their previous name. But ADF, as they're commonly known, great group, good people. So I definitely want to plug them. They came in and helped us out and responded to the Girl Scouts and said, you really have no leg to stand on. Media outlets in this day and age have a First Amendment right to use logos or slogans or identifiers for a company, organization, what have you, when you're reporting on that company or organization. So they really have no grounds to stand on. We basically also, in the reply letter, not only said that we have a free speech right to do this and a First Amendment right to do that, we invited them to enter into a dialogue with LifeNews to say, if there's anything in our reporting that is inaccurate, we would love to know that, because you've claimed in their letter to us, they said, we have no relationship at all with Planned Parenthood. So we dialogued with them. We said, well, please let us know if there's something that's inaccurate, something that's false at LifeNews that we've not reported on accurately. Let us know that, and we can dialogue about that.
Good for you. That's great.
And they've not responded, naturally. So we haven't heard anything back from them. This has been a couple of weeks now. I don't expect we're going to hear anything back on this letter. But they tried to threaten us and tried to, get us basically, because you only send these kinds of things to get people to stop saying bad things about you. It's not about a logo. And some pro-lifers who saw that kind of asked LifeNews and asked us in emails and on Facebook, well, why don't you just stop using the logo in association with the news stories? Well, one, it makes it tough. I mean, what do you use for an image when you're reporting on the Girl Scouts other than their logo?
An image of a Girl Scout, I guess?
Sometimes we've done that, and so we've interchanged those out, so we've done that. But we have a perfectly fair use to be able to do that. So there's nothing wrong with doing it to identify the group we're reporting on. But really, that's not the issue. The issue is not a logo. It's not what is in a news story. The news story is the issue. They're linked to Planned Parenthood. They're promoting of abortion and pro-abortion figures like Wendy Davis or what have you. That is the issue, not the use of a logo. So I really want to get people understanding we don't need to talk about a letter that they sent to try to intimidate us. We need to talk about the intimidation, which is the only reason to send these kinds of letters. And it's funny, we've gotten one before.
I was going to ask about that. I was going to ask about the NAACP thing, because that's another thing. I'm not a lawyer. I read philosophy books, and I don't have any idea what you can and can't do with people's logos. And so when this all went down, it was like, that's interesting, but I have no idea what to think about that. Tell the story. And
well, it's the second time. The NAACP actually went after LifeNews, and they also went after Ryan Bomberger, who is a wonderful pro-life advocate, a very eloquent, very outspoken person who's a LifeNews writer. And last year he wrote on the NAACP, which actually does take, and they've not backtracked on this to try and cover it up, they take a very clear pro-abortion position. They have passed resolutions at their national board endorsing abortion. They have no qualms about saying that because that is their official position, and they're not trying to hide it. And unlike the Girl Scouts, which want to try and vacillate. But Ryan wrote many great pieces about the NAACP, as he does at being a black pro-life person, and took them completely to task in an article at LifeNews. And in that article, we used the NAACP logo, and he also kind of gave them a funny acronym, trying to take NAACP and making it the national abortion of colored people, and talking about how that's their agenda, not actually advancing authentic civil rights for African Americans anymore. And so that article was, I guess, the last straw for them, because we'd run many articles before that, and it was the last straw for them. And they sent the same kind of cease and desist letter. Oh, don't use our logo and our name and blah, 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 blah. Well, they eventually backed down from LifeNews, but they actually went after Ryan in litigation in a case that's currently pending. A decision on that should be coming soon, is our understanding in that case. Ryan countersued to assert his own free speech rights. Again, Alliance Defending Freedom, plug them again, are representing Ryan and doing a very able job in doing that. They've defended him in court and, of course, have asserted his rights. He has full free speech rights to be able to use a logo, to use their acronym, to chide them, to criticize them, to say whatever he wants to say about the NAACP supporting abortion. So this is just how it goes when you talk about big groups and you talk about their abortion agenda.
Are there any limits on what you can do with people's logos? I mean, I've seen like BuzzFeed, like there's several BuzzFeed things that are really funny where people have taken all these corporate logos and made them into like LinkedIn, connecting with people for no reason at all, like things like that. Is there any limit on what you actually legally can do, or is this area
you can't try to make money? I mean, if we're slapping the Girl Scouts logo or the NAACP logo on something and trying to sell it and make money and profit from it, obviously that's beyond the pale. You can't do that and monetize somebody's logo that they've properly copyrighted or registered as a trademark or what have you. You can't do things like that. But in a free speech sense, in a media sense of reporting and commentating and opining on something and talking about that business or company, you just can't stop that. We have a free speech right in this country. It's the reason why it's the First Amendment and not a later on amendment. The founders, they definitely agreed there should be free speech, and you can go back to even some of the founding fathers and newspapers at that time and some of the things they were doing and commenting on, and early Supreme Court cases that said these guys have a right to say. They used to say slanderous, terrible things about politicians that would never make a paper now. People think that today's politics is just so acrimonious and everybody hates each other. It used to be terrible. It used to be even worse. I mean, Aaron Burr and, we're killing people in duels and these kinds of things, which fortunately don't happen now between politicians. We're just beating each other up in campaign ads. But there's a free speech right to say all sorts of things. But again, I want to bring it back to it's about the Girl Scouts. And they want to take away from that. They want to make it this free speech thing or whatever. But we've got to go back to the fact it's a link to Planned Parenthood. They're pushing their agenda. They've run joint events with them at local troop levels. And in fact, I want to say this too, because not only has it been the CEO or the former CEO of the Girl Scouts saying they have a relationship, the troops themselves have said they have a relationship. Really? There was a survey that was sent to 315 Girl Scout councils, the actual troops there at the local level. Now, most of them, and it was a survey that was sent out by American Life League asking about these troops because there were concerns that have, like I said, gone on for decades.
They surveyed all the troops?
They surveyed all 315 of those councils, every single group, and they asked them as a part of the survey, do you work with Planned Parenthood? Do you invite them in? Do you have joint leadership? Do you co-sponsor events with them? Now, obviously, most of them didn't respond. But of those that did respond, about 75 or so, 25% of those Girl Scout troops admitted they have a relationship with Planned Parenthood. They've worked with Planned Parenthood. So it's not just, promoting Wendy Davis or somebody saying this. It's actually working with Planned Parenthood at the local level. And from the upper brass, the former CEO on down, they've admitted that they do this. So there definitely is a tie there. So then
let me ask you about the boycott. What if a local pro-life person in Fresno likes the Girl Scout cookies or generally the Girl Scout idea, have some a theoretically wholesome place for young girls. I don't know what they're talking about now, but I've just always thought of them camping and getting little medals and whatever. But I don't know very much about this. If they maybe called the local troop and asked about the Planned Parenthood connection, and if they were convinced, if the Fresno group's troops said, yeah, we know that maybe some other troops have a connection, but we don't, we've chosen not to for whatever reason, would you feel like then it would be okay for Fresno people to buy the little mint cookies, or would you say, look, until all the troops are no longer connected with Planned Parenthood, there should be a Boy Scout?
I personally would pull my daughter out of Girl Scouts and not participate. But I guess one way you could look at it is kind of like the Democratic Party, or kind of like a church that has a pro-abortion position, say the United Methodist Church or the Episcopalian Church or something like that. I understand those who say they want to be involved in the Democratic Party or that church to try and bring it back to a pro-life value. The Democratic Party used to have a lot of pro-life Democrats that doesn't, nowadays. Back in the day in the 70s, gosh, a third of the party was pro-life in terms of people voting. People like Jesse Jackson used to be pro-life. Al Gore used to be pro-life. People like that. The church, authentic Christian values. The United Methodist Church, which is actually the church I grew up in, although I'm not a part of it now, and that's one of the reasons. Bringing it back to John Wesley and original biblical values and intent. I understand wanting to do that and fight that battle within that group. I can't do that. That's just, I just don't have it within me to do that. I understand if somebody else wants to do it, that maybe that's their battle and that's their fight, and they want to somehow try and bring the Girl Scouts back to an organization that is not associated with Planned Parenthood, that's associated with just good values, just raising girls to be good women. Now, I understand if they want to do that. The concern I have, and the reason why I would pull my daughter out, is because my local troop is linked with a national organization which is promoting Planned Parenthood and abortion, which is also in turn linked. The national organization gives about $1.5 million a year to the worldwide organization, and the international Girl Scouts group is even more solidly pushing pro-abortion agendas. So when you're linked in, when you're tied in, when some of your dues and your monies go to other troops, other national, international groups that are pushing abortion, Planned Parenthood, pro-abortion people, then you kind of become tied into it. It's not a matter of you can say, well, I'm a Democrat and I'm not going to give any dues, and I'll only vote for pro-life Democrats, and I'm not going to vote for any pro-abortion Democrats, and you can somehow exclude yourself from being tied in to abortion or an abortion agenda. Here, if you're paying dues, your money eventually is going to go somewhere that will push that kind of an agenda. So for that reason, I would suggest that people back out and not be a part of it. And also, there are alternatives. For people who are Christians, there's Heritage Girls, American Heritage Girls. It's a Christian group for people who maybe aren't, and they're, that's not their faith. Maybe that's off-putting for them, but for Christians, that's an alternative. Very similar to the Girl Scouts. It pushes good values, skills, learning abilities, the kinds of things young people need to learn to grow up and be good people. That's what that organization is teaching girls. Okay. So there are alternatives out there. You don't have to be in the Girl Scouts.
Is there like a non-Christian, like a secular?
Not that I'm aware of, but that's not my scene. I don't have a daughter, so I haven't really looked into that to find out. But I would encourage people to back out. I really would. Some people have likened it to the United Way as well, because the United Way has some chapters that give money to Planned Parenthood, and has some that absolutely have no relationship with Planned Parenthood. Right. And so some people feel okay giving to those local United Way agencies. Right. I would encourage people, do your homework.
Right.
Do your due diligence. Find out, is your Girl Scout troop, are they having any involvement with Planned Parenthood? Have they ever brought them in? Right. Look at their leadership. Look at their donations. Where's it going? If you're wanting to try and justify staying in the Girl Scouts, at least do that. At least take the time to do the homework and do the research.
Now, what if they're wanting to do the homework and they're wanting to do this as carefully as possible?
Sure.
So now there's a dispute. You had the former Girl Scout president at least twice say publicly there's a relationship. You've got the new president, as well as the letter you got, because I read that letter, and they're very clear. We have not only don't have a relationship now, we never did, and we never will. Mm-hmm. They say in their letter, have a connection. What if that person's like, okay, how do I assess? How could I learn now whether in 2014, since the letter was sent to you, and since the president said there's no connection, how could they know for sure that there actually is still a relationship, and that it's not something
with their
that
local
been...
troop or nationally
Both.
or the whole thing. Nationally, it's easy. You can go to LifeNews. We've got a lot of documentation. In fact, we have one of the things that we posted a couple of months ago are links to newspaper articles from the 70s, 80s, and 90s showing the history of the relationship with Girl Scouts and Planned Parenthood, showing articles where news articles are talking about, hey, the Girl Scouts hired this new leader, and she's also on the board of Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, but
things like that
proves former history. I'm asking about right now.
Right now, well, one of the great things to do is go to a website called GuideStar. GuideStar is a nonprofit website that nonprofit organizations will have all of their information online, so you can see where the money's coming from, where it's going, what have you. Check out your local organization. Check out the national group. See where the money is going. Go to LifeNews. We've got all sorts of documentation on all the things that have happened. If more things happen, if additional things occur, like I said, where they had, for example, last year an international meeting where they passed out Girl Scouted or Planned Parenthood material at a Girl Scout meeting, we'll continue to report on these kinds of things. So keep looking to LifeNews for new things. We can take them at their word if we want to say, okay, they're going to disassociate now, and starting in February of 2014, let's see what happens from there. We'll report on it. If we find out more things, we'll definitely let people know.
So what would it take, because we've only got a few minutes left, what would it take for you to abandon the Girl Scout boycott? To convince you that Girl Scouts is no longer connected with Planned Parenthood to a point where you would be worried about having your daughter in it or giving money or whatever?
It would take a lot of time, because the links there are so many links. It's not just international, it's not just national, it's not just different troops. I mean, you would have to see a wholesale pattern and change of what's going on. But right now, frankly, the Girl Scout spokeswoman, who is right now representing them on television, like I said, is the former Ms. Foundation spokeswoman. So, they're going to have to start not hiring people out of the abortion movement. They're going to have to start not having Girl Scout leaders be on the board of local Planned Parenthood affiliates. I mean, these kinds of things are going to have to change. And if you see a pattern of that changing over a period of time, then potentially you could see a reason to support the Girl Scouts. But it's going to take years.
Would you argue that Christians should just send their girls to the American Heritage thing anyway, because they might end up agreeing more with the values in that troop, assuming that they're a Christian family?
That is an endless debate, and I know, and you may be facing this. I don't know. We really have never talked about this, amazingly enough. I don't think, even though you have children. Do you send your kid to public schools? Do you send your kid to private schools? To a Christian school where values and avoid all the everybody knows, every listener knows the issues that public schools face, from violence to ideological problems in the school in terms of what they teach. We can go down the list. Everybody knows that. It's an age-old question. How do you raise your child? How do you be in the world but not of the world? That's every Christian, I think, on a personal level has to look at their own spiritual maturity, has to look at their own walk with Christ, and determine where they and their children need to be. I can't make that decision for them, and I don't want to cop out, and I don't want to kind of make it a Planned Parenthood response of, it's between them and their doctor, but it's between them and God. It really is. It's their own maturation process and where they're at. But there are good alternatives for people that want that.
All right, that's our show. If you want to comment, you can go to prolifepodcast.net/191 for episode 191. I'm going to have links to all the organizations that we've talked about in the show notes. And remember, you can have a great impact on any conversation if you remember to ask good questions, listen to understand, and find genuine common ground when possible. That's our show. Have a great week. Now go talk to someone.
You've been watching Life Report, Pro-Life Talk, Real World Answers. Life Report is produced by Right to Life of Central California. Visit their website at fresnoprolife.org.